Are you interested in the struggles of our children and the struggles that they face in the American classroom each and every day? Well, let me tell you about the first season of Teach the Babies with Dr. David Johns. It examines the impact of one of the most consequential Supreme Court cases of all time. I'm talking Brown v. the Board of Education. In each and every episode, Dr. David Johns talks to incredible educators and leaders as they all grapple with the question, has Brown's promise been fulfilled? Let me tell y'all something about Dr. David Johns. First of all, he's my friend. He is one of the most brilliant and revolutionary leaders of our community and society at large, and I truly, truly mean that. This brother is deep, and he is absolutely emphatically impassioned about our babies. This is a can't-miss deep dive into one of the most important issues facing our country, which is teaching our babies. And y'all should know that before he was a revolutionary national leader, David Johns started his career where? In the classroom, actually teaching the elementary school babies. I want you to like, subscribe, and share, and most importantly, listen as Dr. Johns and his guest explore these questions with you. You can find Teach the Babies with Dr. David Johns wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey, y'all, I'm Eboni K. Williams here, host and attorney extraordinaire. Welcome to Holding Court, where we analyze the very latest in legal headlines, the ones that got all the streets talking. You know what we do? We dig deep into how the courts impact the culture. We break it down, going straight from gavel to your news feed. And every week, we keep it 100. Right, Dustin Ross?
That's right.
Hey, jurors, what's up? It's your girl, Auntie E. So listen, this week is going to be a bit different. So y'all know the vibes. Normally Dustin and I come in here, we chop it up. We give you 3 great docket items. We break them down legally and culturally. We do what we do, and we send you on your way, hopefully more informed, educated, empowered, and entertained. We're going to do that, but I'm going to do it solo this week. Shout out to the great Dustin Ross, who will be, of course, back in studio with me next week. But your girl just had to get a couple things that were weighing pretty deep this week off my chest, and I needed to just kind of ride this one alone. And it's because I'm really taking y'all to some interesting and very specific points in my mind as I look at what will, I know we keep saying this, y'all, but for real, the most consequential presidential election, certainly of my lifetime. If you're a millennial, this is the big one, as they say. So I'm going to back you up into what led me here, because I had no intention of doing this kind of episode as it related to this presidential race. I'm not working for the campaign. I don't work for either party. I'm a proud registered independent. And yet there's definitely some things that just need to be said right now, pre-election. Put it on the fucking record and make sure that, you know, my jurors, my people have all of the facts, all of the information, all of the perspective that I know how to provide. So that when it all is said and when it all is done, and it will all be said and done, come November 5th at the end of the night, when the votes are tallied, counted, and the decisions are made and the offices transition, I just wanted to be known that y'all had all of the pieces that you needed in order to make the best decision possible. So here I was reading an article from the Wall Street Journal. This was just on Sunday. And the title of this particular article is "The Racial Identity of Americans is Rapidly Blurring and Politics Hasn't Caught Up." I'm going to read it again. Wall Street Journal article entitled "The Racial Identity of Americans is Rapidly Blurring and Politics Hasn't Caught Up." And y'all, when I read it, I was immediately triggered. I said, well, why the fuck am I feeling some kind of way about it, right? Because, of course, it is true that Americans today are more categorically diverse, right? Like we identify, many of us, as multiracial or this and that's, I think, can be a good thing. That somebody like Barack Obama, for example, could be a Black man and a biracial man, right? So that's something that a generation ago wasn't really permissible in the same way. We see it with Meghan Markle, right? Who's very vocal about her mixed race identity. That was something that just wasn't allowed. Y'all know the vibes. Back in the day, you were Black or you were white, and that was it, and that was all. And in fact, the one drop rule applied. So if you had a what we call in the South, a touch of the brush, you had that one drop. it was what it was, and your ass was black, and welcome over here. And we're gonna get back to the one drop rule later in this particular show. But back to this, I read this headline, y'all, specifically the part about politics hasn't caught up, and it triggered me. So I went to explore why I was so triggered. And it occurred to me it was because this notion, this presumption that politics hasn't caught up is a lie. It's actually a false presumption, because I implore to you that politics is not only caught up on the racial diversity piece, that the politics at large is ahead of the game, as they tend to be, as the big time power players and political savants tend to be. They are ahead of the curve as it relates to this notion of racial identity and the rapid blurring of it all. Here's also what I know for sure, and I'm gonna say this part, this is the real piece I need y'all to hear in this episode. When it comes to this 2024 presidential race for the presidency of the United States of America, the Democrats and the Republicans are running two completely different races. No pun intended there with the race piece. But here's what I mean by that. They're both running for the presidency. Yes, indeed they are. But they are running on two drastically different motivations. And let me explain to you what matters in that difference in motivation. Now, we all know the basics, right? That these elections, all elections, but especially these really, really tight ones, these really, really close ones, which we are hearing every day more and more and more about how close this one is. And I know some of y'all feel away, like, how could it be this close? Yeah, we'll get to all that. But here we are. It is that damn close. And that's what you need to know. That's what's important. Not really so much why. We can go into why. But what you need to know is it's neck and fucking neck. And in all of the battleground states, the 7 or so that really are going to change the outcome of this election, that are going to determine it rather, it could not be closer. I'm talking about, we're going to see voting margins. If the last time we saw margins, I told y'all last episode, 15,000 votes, Biden won Georgia by, 11,000 votes, Trump won Michigan by in 2016. Get ready for 6,000 vote difference. Get ready for an 8,000 vote difference in this particular election. It's going to be that damn close. Watch what I say. So the fact is, when it's that close, turnout matters. The ability to turn out voters for your side, for your candidate, is the only thing that matters. Let's just get to it. The party that best turns out their base, and because everybody gonna turn out their base. Well, we'll see. Actually, can't even take that for granted this time around. But everybody should be effectively turning out their base. But then, who can capture just enough of the undecideds, the independents, and the sometimes apathetic voter, the couch, the one that picked the couch? Y'all hearing that? That Kamala's running against Trump in the couch. Okay, well, who can turn the couch piece? Because that's going to be key. And whoever does that, whoever gets that turnout advantage, wins the race. And in this case, they win the White House. And I'm going to go further, y'all. In this case, because what this election, this is a cultural election. And that's what this whole thing I'm breaking down to y'all is about. The policy piece, the policy is cultural. And you probably know where I'm going with it already. So if he or she that wins the turnout race wins the election. Now, what's the difference maker on who will have the turnout advantage? Well, let's look at how these things normally go down. We know that turnout is usually swayed by advertising dollars, right? That's why these campaigns need these big coffers. You know, we hear the Harris campaign has raised over $1 billion. That's amazing, because that means, theoretically at least, she and her campaign should be able to spend and deploy that $1 billion on TV ads, radio ads, pay for rallies, make sure that they are funding a proper ground game politically, right? Making sure grassroots organizers, people out there knocking on doors, vote for Harris walls, all that shit, right? And Trump should be doing the exact same thing. I mean, he's been very successful in his fundraising as well. Not as much as Harris in this particular late inning, but certainly has a very respectable bank for his campaign as well. They normally spend on the same thing. And those are the things, the ads, TV and radio, the rallies, the ground game, the door knocking, the organizing. And as both Harris and Trump have done in this race, heavy reliance on social media. Okay. I heard, I think I heard the Harris campaign, and I'm sure the Trump campaign too. They're literally paying $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to social media influencers to post on their behalf. Got it. Okay. So this fine. That's taking advantage of the technology. Makes sense. And then also both are heavily relying on big prime time kind of podcast interviews. Kamala might be trying to go on Joe Rogan. Y'all know the vibes. Shout out to Charlemagne the God, who had, I think, 30 billion impressions of his radio town hall with Vice President Harris. And Trump has also been, out there on these big podcasts doing the same thing. Okay. So that's normally what dictates the turnout. And those things will apply. But ultimately, what is the why, right? Why is somebody going to a poll? And in this case, because y'all best motherfucking believe the polls are open as you're listening to this, polls and a whole lot of these battleground states are open as we speak. What is the motivation to get people from their house, their school, their couch to get in that line, many times stay in that line for hours upon hours upon hours, oftentimes with no food, nothing to drink, and cast that vote? And pay attention, y'all, to the fact that we are already seeing record-breaking early voting turnout. And while that's expected from the Democrat side, I need you to know that that is a brand new fucking element when it comes to Republicans. Republicans don't really vote early. They really don't do that. So the fact that we are seeing them show up to the polls in record numbers this early, it says something about the motivation piece. More about it in just a second. But it's evident that where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are running for president, they are indeed running two totally different races. Now, the Democrats, okay, let's talk about their why. Let's talk about why, at least the framing so far from the Democrat Party, Kamala Harris, Harris Walls. This is the why that we're hearing. We're hearing that the big why is to save democracy. Cool, got it. Natural correlation. Everybody saw what happened on January 6th. Many people are now naming the fascism piece of the Trump of it all. So it makes sense that the stated motivating factor, the stated big why one would be compelled to cast a vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and the Democrats in this election is to do the mighty, patriotic, important work. And it is important work. I am not mocking it. That is to save democracy as we know it, to make sure that America remains a country of representative democracy, where each person, each citizen has a say. That is a worthwhile and compelling motivator. And then, the micro of it all, of course, are the policies, right? Kamala Harris is running on the economy. She's running, saying that most of the economy under the Joe Biden administration was net positive for Americans. It could be better. She's running on housing. She's running on healthcare. She's running on the issues, even as she runs on immigration, denouncing that she was the border czar necessarily, but talking about how, there needs to be pathway to citizenship, but also stern boundaries and borders. Y'all know the vibes. But even the way she's running on immigration, I submit to you, it's as if it's just another American policy, as if it's, no different necessarily than the environment or geopolitics. And that's traditional. That's how candidates tend to run on these big bucket policy items that we see on polling. And under this broader mantra this time around, which is, I think, fairly unique for this campaign, Joe Biden's motivator was to return America to decency, right? Let's just be a decent country again, because Trump was so indecent. Kamala Harris is saying, well, we saw what happened on January 6th. We know how far this man will go. He wants to be a dictator, a tyrant. This is fascism. We got to save democracy here. Vote Kamala Harris, Tim Walz on November 5th. Makes sense. Because when you think about it, y'all, what higher stake could there be in American politics? You would think that would be the paramount motivator. And yet I'm here to tell y'all, it is not. There is indeed a single American principle that I say is more compelling, more pronounced, more threatening, and more immediate, that represent a more clear and present danger to those that believe in it than even the downfall of our democracy. What is it? Well, of course, I'm talking about the preservation of whiteness. Yes, I am. Yeah, I am. And I know some of y'all are going to hear that and be like, oh, here she goes again. And this is feeling like hyperbole, and maybe it feels radical to you. I really want to invite you to consider, what if it's not? What if it's not? What if indeed, for those that really believe in it, that really need it, consciously or subconsciously, that the preserving, maintaining, and ensuring that whiteness, the ability to identify and be white in America as the top position in the American social order, the societal order, and in such societal order, now you're talking about sitting atop expectations for healthcare. This is why their outcomes look different, right? Let me just make it plain. So it's not so abstract. Whiteness means that white women die 4, 5, even up to 9 times less likely than Black women. That's how whiteness works. Okay. So whiteness remaining at the very top of all of those American societal orders, finances, economics, jobs, education, healthcare, environment. You know, the reason why Flint still to this day doesn't have clean water, all that kind of shit. The preservation of the whiteness piece, meaning that you get to live a certain kind of life. And it's not that it's always wealthy. Of course, we're not saying all white folks are wealthy and all white folks, are without struggle. That would be ridiculous. But it is saying that whiteness piece is one less thing you have to worry about. And making sure that remains the case, as has always been the case in this country, I submit to you, is a hell of a lot more motivating than just saving good old-fashioned American democracy. Because for those that believe in it, those that need that whiteness piece to remain intact as it currently stands today and has always been the case since 1619, that preservation of that positioning of whiteness in this nation is the absolute single most important thing on the ballot for that piece of America. Now, let's look at a little bit of why I'm saying that this is clearly what the Republicans are running on. I submit they're running a different race because they're not running on the stuff that we tend to at least conceivably think of Republicans running on. No, they're saying instead that they're running for the working class. They're saying that they're running for the forgotten American, wink, wink. Now, some paint them, the Democrats, many times paint the Republicans as running for the wealth class, for the billionaire class. They say they're running for the tech bros. I don't really think they're running for that either. Do those camps benefit from a Republican presidency, from a Trump presidency specifically? Yeah, sure they do. But let me be real clear. This particular Republican ticket in 2024 for the United States presidency, led atop by Donald Trump, who, of course, at this station in the game has been convicted of 34 felonies with many more opportunities for conviction or acquittal outstanding. He is running for the clear and unadulterated and singular purpose of making sure, protecting and maintaining the positioning, the superiority, and the absolute dominance of whiteness in America. And if I didn't need any more affirmation around my analysis here, I woke up just this morning, to Elon Musk saying that he is willing to pay $1 million out of his own pocket on a daily basis leading up to this election for folks to vote Trump. Now, I know some of y'all, he's saying flat out, I'm going to buy your vote. I'll bribe you for it. There's absolutely nothing I won't do. I will do whatever it takes to get y'all to the polls for Trump. That is just how motivated Elon Musk is to make sure that Donald Trump wins. He's going to give out $1 million a day. Now, that's not chump change for him because he's got so much money, but still, $1 million a day is a hell of a motivator. So what's underneath it? What's driving it? Now, I know a lot of y'all say, well, he's a billionaire. He's a tech bro. He wants to make sure Trump is in so that the regulations don't tighten on him, yada, yada, yada. And y'all really, really gonna sit there and actually believe that this is a pure business motivated thing from Elon Musk. And if you believe that this is straightforward business politics as usual, I have a beautiful beach house. It's right here in Harlem and I want to sell it to you. I really do. Of course, y'all, yes, business is at play. But I'm going to ask you to look a little deeper under that hood. The business at play is that of whiteness. And it is a big multi-trillion-dollar business. And if you think it's an accident, if you think it's a pure coincidence, if you think it's a pure coincidence that Elon Musk, who just so happens to be from where, y'all? Where is he from? What nation is he from? Oh, he's from South Africa. The same South Africa that knows firsthand just how absolutely essential it is to both create and maintain a racial caste system where whiteness sits atop, right? I mean, not until 1990 and the end of apartheid as we knew it, as they knew it, did South Africa, not until 1990, when apartheid as they knew it came down, did South Africa ever have to really reconcile with what it would look like for whiteness to be stripped of its default positioning, sitting atop the social, societal hierarchy. And keep in mind, South Africa also had what? They had created an intermediate class. Remember going back to the Wall Street Journal headline that got me all on this tailspin? Remember that? The racial blurring? Well, South Africa decided to do some racial blurring because their numbers worked in the opposite way, right? Whereas America has a white population majority, South Africa has always had a Black African racial majority. So they needed to create that intermediate hybrid class of the colors. There's some of y'all mad at Tyler right now. Well, see, that's where that class comes from, that racial ambiguous something in the middle, because in their case, the something in the middle helped protect the whiteness at the top. See, it's the opposite here, though. I'm submitting to y'all, and I'm going to prove it to you as I walk down this analysis, that racial blendingness, that racial ambiguity piece, that blurriness, as the Wall Street Times calls it, that we are indeed experiencing here in America. Right now, y'all, about 10% of Americans polled, 10% identify as multiracial. So it's true that we are becoming a more blended racial country in that way. And I submit to you, all of that does is drive up the motivation, the motivating impulse of those that are white and need to be white to protect it. And just to wrap up the Elon Musk piece, just think about it. He's South African by birth. He knows not only in his own lived experience, but also from all the stories. Can you imagine the stories told to him as a white South African about how good it used to be? And not back in the 1800s, not in the early 1900s. I'm talking about the 1960s, 70s, 80s, how good it really used to be white in South Africa. And imagine what that does to Elon Musk's motivation to make sure that here in America, where I submit to you, apartheid has not really fallen all that much, not for real. It's fallen some, but it has not fallen all the way, which is why you still have the discrepancies of lived experience between Black Americans and white experience, and white Americans generally, rather. Elon Musk is very fucking motivated to make sure that this land that he now calls home, America, the United States of America, maintains its social hierarchy, unlike South Africa, where whiteness and whiteness alone sits atop of all the operating systems. And y'all remember, this man is already worth $250 billion with a B dollars. Now, I'm not saying there's not more money to get, and those that are in that billionaire class stay there because they're constantly worried about making more and more and more and keeping it. I get that. But again, two things can be true at the same time. And I submit to you, here they are. Yes, Elon Musk very much wants Donald Trump at the White House for the reduced regulations of his particular business interests. And Elon Musk, more than most, understands firsthand the geo perspective of maintaining whiteness. Okay, now let me go around here and distinguish whiteness as a construct from individual white people, because we all know that this is one of the things that many people critique about some of Trump's voters, right? They say, how are these poor white people voting for Trump? Because, he clearly doesn't give a damn about poor white people. He clearly cares about the billionaire class and all of this. I've even heard some of y'all say poor white people and white women are voting against their interests when they vote for Trump. I assure you they are not. They are not. They are very much voting for their interests. Because who needs whiteness more than a poor white person? See, let's go back in our history books. Let's go back to around 1619 when we all first got here. And shout out to the Native American and indigenous people. They were already here, but the rest of us got here around those times, around the 1619 mark. So when we came, we didn't come in equal capacity. We know that there was the wealthy white colonist, right? Then there were the enslaved servants, the Black African Negro types. And then, of course, there were the poor whites who were bought here in an indentured servitude capacity. And originally, some Africans were brought to this nation in an indentured servitude capacity. And then people realized, white people, I should say, realized that this created a problem. And I'm going to fast forward through this real quick, but do yourself a favor if you don't know this history of how these categories were cemented and read up on that, because it's very important. If you could ever understand race in America, you have to understand how Blackness became a thing in America. Because, if you talk to Africans, they're like, well, we're not Black where we're from. No, Blackness is a very American construct in that way. So in order to separate the indentured servant whites and the indentured servant Blacks, there had to be a creation of social hierarchy that wasn't around capacity of service. That wasn't around whether you served or whether you were the owner or the boss or the this or the that, or you had this kind of job or that kind of job. No, we had to make it about race. And at that point, y'all, everything fucking changed. So at that point, even if the white planting class, so the quote poor white and the poor Black did the same damn thing for work, let's say they both planted tobacco or harvest tobacco or whatever, know that white planter had a totally different lived experience. Both poor, both doing back-breaking, labor-intensive work. But the white man had the benefit of whiteness. And the white wealth class said, because you're white and for no other reason, not because you're more educated, not because you're more deserving, just because you are white, we're going to give you the right to potentially vote, potentially own property, and potentially do this, that, and live a human existence, a humane existence. And the Black folks, well, not so much. And then it became all this other shit, which, again, read up on your own leisure, but the presumptions that Black folks, by nature, the sons and daughters of Africa, were not intelligent enough, were not capable enough, and that these things were exclusively to be held by white folk, poor or rich. So this is just the historical significance of whiteness, even amongst the poor whites. So again, if you are poor and you are white, you have got to have this white piece, this whiteness social construction that just hands you by birthright an elevated positioning due to your whiteness. Otherwise, you're just another poor person. One could confuse you with a nigga. Oh my God, did I say it? Did I say it? All right. I'm not going to go there too much this episode because I know it's going to get really triggering for people, but I hope you heard it. Okay, so again, back to this race. So while Republicans and Trump are running unequivocally on whiteness, and I do want, again, just by way of referencing and citing my sources, listen to brother Ta-Nehisi Coates. He wrote a brilliant piece in The Atlantic back in 2017, right? So this is actually after Trump's first election. It is called The First White President. Provocative, right? The First White President. And Ta-Nehisi and The Atlantic published this September 7th, 2017. Okay? And he breaks down better than I can exactly what he means by Trump being the first white president. And of course, I know you're thinking, well, what the fuck? Because all 43 before Barack Obama were white, and they were. But in short, what Ta-Nehisi is saying is that those white men, white they were, and obviously huge benefactors of whiteness, absolutely, they had at least earned their mark in some industry. Every single one of them had served in a public capacity before everyone. Most of them had served in the United States military. Trump is the first and only one who has never in his entire life served in any public capacity before the White House. And he is the first one that was just so flagrantly lacking of any qualifications whatsoever other than the one most paramount, most important, most germane, most essential qualification of them all, whiteness. That is what Ta-Nehisi Coates means when he says the first white president, Donald J. Trump. Check it out. There's also a very nice 2-minute video that accompanies it. So again, this is not about Trump giving a damn about these particular white people. And it's a broad coalition of white people that support Trump generally. Okay. Rich ones, poor ones. Because again, this whole narrative of, well, it's just these economically left behind, disenfranchised. No. Trump wins college educated whites. Trump wins white women historically. We'll see how they act this election. I hope they act better. I hope they show themselves to be better. We'll see. And I really mean that, but we'll see. So Trump wins every category of white voters in America, men, women, across age demographics, and across socioeconomics. Whatever could it be that is motivating them? What do they have in common? It's not money. It's not necessarily gender. It's not necessarily religion. It's not even necessarily sexual orientation. Whatever could it be? Oh, it is whiteness and what it still to this day affords them. So again, that is a motivator that I don't think can be topped, even by the preciousness of saving American democracy. So how do I know that? How do I know that whiteness is just that compelling? And again, I'm not saying all white people are chiefly motivated by it. And I will absolutely name that distinction in a minute before I leave out of here. But it is for some, for that segment of white folks that need to be white in order to ensure some aspect of their positioning and that of their children and grandchildren and the so-called and the so on. Oh yeah, it's going to get them to the polls in ways in which we've never seen. Now, how do I know that? Whiteness itself is on the ballot on the Donald J. Trump Republican side. And I know that because when I look at this record turnout from Republicans, what else could it be? So right now we're seeing, again, record early voting turnout in the states of North Carolina and Georgia. And Wisconsin is looking pretty damn impressive as well. Particularly here, the states, Georgia and North Carolina are showing up in numbers to which we've never, ever seen in American history, ever. Means that they are being motivated in a new way. It means that this is not about small government, and this is not about a tax rate. This is about, I submit to you, their understanding of what they are really running this race on, which is the positioning and the preservation of their white benefit. And it is indeed a benefit, their privilege. And when y'all think about it, it's almost the only way, right? It could make sense that these particular Republicans in these states are showing up so enthusiastically in such huge numbers, lines wrapped around the building over and over and over again for a man with 34 convictions of felonies in the United States of America. I mean, again, a man who by his own existence has broken the very one promise that he ran on originally. Do y'all forget when Trump came down that elevator back in, 2015, early 2016? And he created a phenomenal campaign that he ultimately won. You know, he promised to do just one thing to his own base. Y'all remember what it was? That man promised to build a wall. Yes, he did. He promised, he said, I am going to build a wall and I'm going to make Mexico pay for it. Didn't he? I know I didn't make that up. He absolutely said and promised it. And the one thing he promised that he would do as president, after 4 years, he never fucking did it. Nope. Y'all seen him? Didn't even give a damn status update. You know, like the wall is halfway done no, nothing. So this is not about them loving and enthusiastically running to early vote and support a president who has lived up to his promises to them. He broke the one damn promise he did make. No, this is about what I just told y'all it's about. And if you think it's about something else, you're missing it. You're missing it. Maybe you're missing it because it's too dark of a thought to consider that many white Americans, and by the way, of course, it's not just white people voting for Trump. There are some Black folks and certainly many Latino individuals and probably some Asians too that are voting for Trump because they are committed to their own proximate positioning of the white hierarchy. And they're saying they would rather ensure that it remains intact because they know where they stand with it and they made their peace with it. Maybe some of them even fucking like it. Okay. Because in that position, let's just play with the black man piece just for a minute. If you're a black man in America and you know what it is to live that experience, but you also know the lived experience of that of the black woman, it it would it would it would stand to reason that there'd be a segment of black men that say, as bad as it is for me, I will take my positioning that at least shares the man identity piece with Trump and white supremacy and the patriarchy, which is a byproduct of white supremacy, by the way, because at least I've got the benefit of that over that of the black woman. See, that's why you hardly ever see black women generally voting for Republicans and certainly not voting for this particular Republican and Donald Trump. Because see, there is, and you look at the Venn diagram, there's actually zero opportunity for benefit for black women. And at least you can spin a narrative to black men if you're Trump or the Republican that say, hey, black man, come over here with us because we're not going to lie to your face completely and make you think that you're ever going to be our equal. Let's not get carried away or ridiculous. But what we can guarantee you is that you'll never be at the absolute complete bottom of the social order. Why? Because that position is reserved for the black woman. And you ain't a black woman, and we treat you differently than black women. So come over here. That's an argument. Not saying it's all black men. It's certainly not most black men. That's why most black men vote Democrat. That's why Kamala Harris, I think right now has around 70, 80, something between 70 and 80% of black male support. But know that those margins matter and know that when you vote in that way, that is a part of what you are ensuring. All right, so let me go back to this Wall Street Journal piece. It talks about the racial blurring of America, and it talks about how now, again, 10% of Americans polled today identify as multiracial. So it's important that we acknowledge that this piece is suggesting, and many people believe, that we have gotten beyond the traditional buckets of just white, black, Asian, Hispanic, and Native American. And in fact, I am absolutely willing to stand and admit, hold my hand up, that it was only in this article that I heard for the first time of the racial category of Native Hawaiian, along with many times Middle East and North African as their own designated categories. And then, like I said, many times you can choose to pick this and multiple, and it's all of that. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that acknowledging all aspects of one's identity, including the racial ones, can be very important. But what I am saying is when it comes to American politics, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. It's not a thing today. It might be a thing tomorrow, but it's not a thing today. And we know that Democrats are often accused of relying on the identity politics piece and do, but Republicans do and more, okay? Because it is that whiteness piece. And see, the thing about whiteness is it becomes very elusive to identify because it rarely names itself. See, this is why it was such a, some people cringe when it was white guys for Kamala Harris. But nobody cringed when it was black women for Kamala Harris. Nobody cringed when it was Latino men, queer people. No other category, every other category gets to stand proudly, confidently, and boldly in their proclamation of identity. But white folk. And see, actually, I think this is part of the problem. White people never want to say they're white. They never want to, and maybe there's a bunch of reasons around that. I'm not white. I can only speculate. But see, it's very important that we demand and require white people to identify as white because they are and they operate as such. So therefore, it is absolutely Republicans that more than anyone else operate on the notion of identity politics. And it's a white identity. Let's be very fucking clear. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the one drop rule because some of y'all literally might be too young to know what it is, or culturally, it just has never been something that you've been exposed to. But I'm of the generation and of the Southern cultural upbringing that the one drop rule is very, very important. Historically, it's important. And I submit to you that it hasn't gone anywhere. So all of this speculation about whether Kamala Harris is or isn't black, and some of y'all wanted to play that game with Barack Obama, though less as much, maybe because it was a generation ago. Yeah, those folks are black because if for no other reason, white folks say they are black per the one drop rule. So let's go back. The one drop rule came to be because of just this exact type of historical American moment. Of course, the rule saying that if you got one drop of Black blood in you, you are indeed Black and you will live a Black existence and you will be strictly prevented and prohibited from the experience, the benefits, any of the protections afforded white folk. Okay. Why is this the case? Well, we know it's because that there was a time in America where this type of racial blending has happened before. Okay, this is not new. This is not new. Let's go back to a time where this convoluting of different positionings and identities was causing way too much fucking confusion. And I'm going to particularly cite some history that is close to me. It's personal history. This goes back to right before the Louisiana Purchase. So there was a section of what we now know as the Gulf, the Southern Gulf, that Louisiana territory. And it used to have, before it was acquired by and purchased by America, that territory enjoyed a multi-tiered caste system, a multi-tiered, multiracial caste system, where, of course, as usual, as everywhere in the world, Blackness sat at the very bottom. So the Black folks in Louisiana were the very bottom, the servitude class, stripped of any and all rights. No right to own property, no right to go to school, no right to do anything but be a slave. And then, of course, there were the white class of that Louisiana territory, who, as always, sat at the very, very top of the order. They were the elite class. They had all of the rights. And then there was this middle class, and they were called the free people of color. These are your Louisiana Creoles, some of your Cajuns, some of this swirly, ambiguous, blurred, per the Wall Street Journal term, blurred racial class. And they had, as you might expect, a hybrid experience. Some of them were educated. Some of them owned property. Some of them owned slaves themselves. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Some of them intermarried legally at that time, or some version of it, certainly acknowledged by society, if not legal by statute. And then, as that territory, and they went about that way for a period of time. This is where, it all went well until it didn't. And then when they got to the place where they were going to be purchased by the United States of America, America said, oh, hell to the no. Y'all are not coming up in here with that bullshit, because we have very strict and concise and rigid roles as it relates to racial identity in this country. And that's how we keep it status quo. And that's how we like it. And if you're going to be over here, you're going to have to get with it. And so literally overnight, that free class of people of color went away like that in an instant. So no more mulattoes and octoroons and quadroons and all these kind of stair-stepped identities that allow rights here and rights there that were based on one's kind of proximate or proportional white identity. There was no more such thing as proportional white identity, hence the one drop rule. And it was created because that is the way whiteness functions. And if you don't hear anything else I've said in this long ass analysis today, hear that. Whiteness functions by exclusion, keeping people out of it, making sure that it limits who gets to be white, when, how, where, and how long they even get to be white. And every other racial identity operates by inclusion. Think about that. Think about why that matters. So that's how we got the one drop rule, one of the many ways, I should say. And America's never been the same since. Because certainly this notion, this is why I was triggered by this Wall Street Journal article talking about the blending of the racial identities and how politics hasn't caught up. What the fuck are you talking about? Because when I hear that, y'all, I hear a huge gaslighting. And I don't mean to say that those multitudes of identities don't exist proudly and boldly. Of course they exist. But what I am calling bullshit on is when it comes to American politics, we are still right back at the one drop rule, and you better fucking believe it. We are not post-racial. We are not at a place where these hybrid proportionalities of white identity or African identity or Asian identity fucking matter. They do not. They do not. Not when it comes to American politics. The one drop rule is still very much at play. And if you are somebody that wants to see a day in America where where we are past it, right? Where maybe there is actual political space to have a multiracial identity, a multicultural identity. More power to you. But trust and believe and know within your soul that that will never be accomplished with the continuation of Donald Trump and this particular campaign. It's a campaign, y'all, to maintain and ensure, double down and cement the positioning of whiteness as the dominant, supreme, and superior tier, first class, first tier lived experience in the United States of America. Because that's what it is. Just get really, really clear, jurors, around what is really on these ballots and what this race is really about. There's an argument that it's about the economy and immigration. And let's just touch immigration right quick. If you think that the Republicans are talking about immigration in any context that is other than that of centering whiteness, you are either naive and or you're delusional. Okay? Because the immigration piece is the main thing they've been talking about. The wall piece, immigration. Kamala Harris is totally incompetent. The worst vice president we've ever had in American history based on her performance on what? Immigration. And really, we know that's just based off of her identity, right? But we'll move on. And if you think that it's really about immigration, ask yourself, where is the massive cry out, the naming and the centering of the immigrants from Amsterdam? How about the immigrants from Germany? Is it about the immigrants from Australia? No, because those are all white immigrants. Those would be people that at this point, now keep in mind, there was a time where the Italians and the Irish, and certainly the Jewish, the Ashkenazi European Jewish immigrants were not white. And in fact, they only became white with the permission of the dominant white British class of America, Protestant whites, let them become white temporarily, conditionally, because they needed their numbers. Because when they saw that the African, the emancipated Africans and the Chinese Exclusion Act, which was a statute that literally made it illegal for Asians to become citizens for a very long time, when they saw that those things were breaking down and that they could not uphold themselves as they once had during the civil rights era. See, the timing of this, y'all, is not ever a coincidence. Y'all got to really put this shit together. When the traditional Protestant white British existence in America, that for the longest time were the only folks that got the benefit of being actual white folks in America, when they saw that their numbers were being threatened and they were being potentially overtaken by Black majorities, Asian majorities, Hispanic majorities, Latino majorities, they said, well, we're gonna have to loosen this velvet rope, if you will, on this whiteness shit. We're gonna let some of these Italians be white. We're gonna let some of these Irishmen and women be white. We're gonna even we can't believe we're gonna do this, y'all. We're gonna let some of these Jews be white for the sake of shoring up the bona fide strength of whiteness in America. And this is why more of us need to be aware of how whiteness works, its limitations, and why in which we are, I'm not going to say united, I'm going to say aligned in mutual beneficial interest to truly deconstruct, disassemble, and destroy this white supremacist hierarchy. That's the why on that, not just the altruistic piece, although nice to do. Morally the right thing, sure. But there's a real tactical reason why it must be annihilated. So again, y'all, here it is. Republicans are running a different race. I started with this statement. I'm going to end with it. They are running a race that singularly has a mandate to make sure that they as white folk and their children and grandchildren remain at the very top of the American order. Doesn't matter if they're educated whites, uneducated whites, poor whites, wealthy whites, East Coast whites, West Coast whites, Middle America whites, Midwestern whites. It doesn't fucking matter if you are a white person or white proximate and or you are comfortable, which you can definitely be non-white doing the work of upholding this white hierarchy. Please believe it. It happens every day. So if you are any of those and it is important to you that this white hierarchy remains intact, then we know what you're going to do on Election Day. Because Trump has absolutely done a really great job of making it very plain and very clear that Trump winning ensures that whiteness at the top of the social and societal order will remain. before I move on, I just want to be clear here. If you didn't catch it, let me just say it plain. If you're Black, Asian, or Hispanic, or Afro-Latina, or whatever you want to identify yourself with, and you believe that there's going to be some other type of status you get to occupy as according to that, let me be very clear about it. This Republican Party, led by Donald Trump, is solely motivated to keep the one-drop rule and their supreme and singular dominance at play. So just know you're opting into all of it. So however you feel like you operating right now, that's what it's going to be. And that is what is driving the turnout in 2024. Now, if that is not your speed, if you are not interested in making a further cemented case for whiteness sitting at the very top, and by itself, by the way, at the very top of the American social and societal order, if you don't need it, if you don't like it, then I suggest you do something about it. I suggest you get extremely clear on exactly what's motivating who, why, and when in this race. And then I suggest you act like it. And I suggest you vote like it. And final word to my white jurors, and I do have them, and shout out to y'all. And I feel a little bit like Joe Clark here, where he's like, one of my white students at Eastside High. Hey, fellas, sing the school song. And they sing it, they sound like shit. Needs works, fellas, needs works. But good to see you. Shout out to my white jurors. Because not every white person in America, by any stretch, needs whiteness. I must say this because you could easily hear everything I laid down today and be like, wow, this is a real indictment of white people. It is not. No. Any more than make a glaring across the board indictment of people with blonde hair or brown eyes. See, you're born how you're born. If you happen to be born white, you were just born white. That is a totally separate mechanism than those who need it. See, either you could just be white or you could need whiteness. And those are two different things. Are you somebody that can just stand in it, can stand on your own intelligence, your own meritocracy, your own work ethic, your own moral compass, your own character traits, and exist and compete, dare I say compete in this world broadly without the default currency positioning and posture of whiteness? Because there's definitely white folks that can and do. And then those will be the people that are voting a particular way on November 5th. But, to thy own self be true. And we each know ourselves better than we know anyone else, and certainly better than others know us. So do some real self-discovery and figure out what kind of white person you may be. Are you the kind of white person that in this moment in 2024 says, you know what? I didn't ask for white supremacy. I didn't build white supremacy. And I'm at a point where, you know what? Fuck it. I can do this thing called life without it. Don't have to have it. Well, I invite you to the broader coalition of the true ideals and promises of what America was always stated she should be. Y'all better listen to RTE. I know I be out here sometimes, but I am telling you what I know. I am telling you what my degree in Black and African studies has taught me. I am telling you what my ear to the ground of close corridors have taught me. I worked at Fox News for 5 years plus. Come on now. All right, y'all. So that's it and that's all. The Democrats and the Republicans, Kamala and Trump, they're running two different races. Kamala's running a traditional American race around saving democracy. Cool. Got it. Needed. Trump is running and the Republicans are running on preserving a way of American life that is essential for them. So much so that they are willing to die for it. We know that because we saw what happened on January 6th. And it's not a little fringe, little piece. It's a broader majority of anybody that stands in that position. So that's what's motivating them. Get clear about what's motivating you. And then what we're going to see y'all on November 5th is who exactly was more motherfucking motivated. That's it. That's exactly what all of this is. Once you get that clarity, I want you to act like it and I want you to vote like it. All right, that's it. That's all. Thank you so much, jurors. I'm going to leave y'all with the great words that Dustin Ross would say. And that is, on this one, heavy, read your terms and conditions.
Holding Court is produced by Uppity Productions. Host and executive producers here, Eboni K. Williams, yours truly, and the Dustin Ross. Executive producer in Dossie, McCraw. Our senior producer, Ashley Hobbs. Creative consultant, Jay Kleinberg. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any and everywhere you get your podcasts.